Hi, and welcome to the Property Funder podcast. I'm Michael Dean. You can find me or you can block me or mute me on the internet at property_funder. I'm here today with Sam. Now, before we chat to Sam, just a few things I want to say. First of all, thanks very much to the show's sponsor, Avonmore Capital. Avonmore Capital is a development and bridging lender based here in London. We are actually in Avonmore's old offices on our building in Cannon Place. Avonmore lends money from £250,000 to £15 million, and in fact up to £25 million, thanks to a new funding line, to residential developers, small and large, across the UK. The other thing I wanted to say to you is, if this is your first time watching or listening to the podcast, thank you very much for joining us. If you're a returning listener or viewer, again, really appreciate your support. If I could ask you to like and subscribe to this episode, it means that more people can access inspiring and enlightening and enlivening content from inspiring business leaders like Sam, who we've got here today. Now, Sam, tell us your full name and tell us the name of your business and what your business does.
Thank you for having me, Michael. So I'm Saam Lowni. I am the founder of Merryoaks Property Finance. We are a property finance brokerage for investors and developers across the UK, helping them with all their funding requirements, from buy-to-lets, HMOs, to bridging, development, commercial term loans, VAT bridging, anything property related.
So if it's property and needs funding, Merryoaks is the place to go.
Exactly.
Now, obviously, we've had a lot of finance brokers come on the show. It's a natural part and parcel of our core audience is finance brokers. And I think a lot of them tune in because they want to hear what a lot of their peers are doing. What do you think it is that sets you apart, makes you different from the rest of the market? Sort of what makes you special, Sam?
It's a very good question, because over the time that I was building the business plan to set up Merryoaks Property Finance, I was thinking of USPs, because there are a lot of brokers out there. There are a lot of mortgage brokers that do a lot of residential mortgages. And then there's ones that trickle through to do the more heavy duty industrial type stuff like the bridging, development, buy-to-lets, etc. And I needed to find that USP, and I thought long and hard about it. And it is challenging, because there are some really, really good brokers out there. At the same time, my origins from getting into the finance side of property, although I've been in property for over 20 years, was through being a lender. And I used to head up an origination department whereby we used to see all of the applications coming through. And I used to see that the really poor quality of applications that would be sent to us. And people were asking for anywhere, the ticket size for that lender was between 3 and 30 million. So they were asking for a pretty sum of money. And I could just see that there's a gap in the market for somebody not only that knows what they're doing, knows what questions are going to be answered, so you can provide those answers up front, but has a lot of passion in doing so as well. I think a lot of people, similar to how I started out in property as an estate agent, I think some people just fall into it rather than really have a passion for it, and therefore it comes through in the level and quality of the work that they
do. So in your situation, was it you were seeing deals that were actually okay deals, but they were packaged in such a bad way that it was really difficult to kind of work out whether it was a proceedable deal, or deals were being lost by particular brokers on the margins because of the way that they were presenting them or the way they were putting them forward?
Yeah, you've probably got some experience of this and seeing deal flow that comes through. You don't get a second chance at a first impression. And if you find that somebody sent over an application or an inquiry and it doesn't have all of the information, you think somebody in this team doesn't know what they're doing. Either it's the broker who's being a little bit lackluster, or it's a developer that has no idea on how to secure finance because they've never done this sort of thing before. So automatically you've got, we used to have this kind of rule of like, there's only so many yellow flags that we can afford to have in a case before we start to think, actually, there's something not quite right about this, and let's turn away from it. So if there's a yellow flag immediately on application when you see the inquiry in the first instance, it's just not getting things off to the right start. There's a whole host of other stuff that I thought I could add value to, having started out my career as an estate agent. So I understand exits, lettings, property sales, valuations. And also I'm an investor, developer, landlord myself. I've built up a property portfolio across the country. I've done refurbishments and developments and conversions. So I just felt that with that holistic level of advice that I could provide, the passion and insight into the credit process, I thought I'd be better placed than most other brokers to provide that service.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about your background. So you went into a estate agency. I mean, I actually did a post earlier this week on LinkedIn. Maybe you caught it, where there's a really large proportion of the guests we've had on the podcast of successful entrepreneurs who started, maybe they left school at 16 and went straight into a estate agency. Mixed responses as to whether it was a estate agency that made them or whether it was a estate agency that they were so put off by a estate agency that they had to become successful entrepreneurs on the back of it. How did you get into a estate agency in the beginning?
So for me, really clear. I always knew I wanted to be an estate agent growing up. So from the age of, I think about 10 years old, I decided I wanted to be an estate agent. It was kind of property developer as well to a certain extent, but certainly estate agent was my route in. My old man was into property. My parents used to buy little 2-up, 2-downs up in the northeast, refurbish them and sell them on. The guy that they were buying them from became, his son was my best friend. We came to know, and he was a big inspiration on me. So he'd take me to Newcastle United football matches, take me to cricket nets, take me on golf trips, take me on Lake District for bike rides. And he basically was just a great guy. And I always thought, when I grow up, I want to be more like him. And he had a chain of estate agents. He'd sold them off in the early 90s, got more into property development. So all of that, being in that environment, playing Monopoly, all that kind of cliched stuff, really, really had an effect on me. So by the time I got to London to study, moving from Durham in the northeast, which is where I grew up, I was told by my parents that nobody wants a business graduate with no work experience to go get a job. I was never academically that interested in school, and I was like grade C average anyway. So by the time I started making money as an estate agent, I had to work for free for 3 months because nobody would give me a job because I was studying full time. By the time somebody gave me a part-time role, Fridays, Saturdays, Mondays, stapling property lists together, getting teas, coffees and lunches, and then starting to answer the phone, then registering applicants, then starting to do viewings, and then starting to do my own deals, I really got the bug for it. I was good at it. I really had a passion for it. I liked driving people around, talking to them. It was just great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's quite interesting that you wanted to be an estate agent growing up. We're probably a fairly similar age, and I think even now estate agents remain on the sort of 5 most hated professions. So I think some people might be raising eyebrows as to that you choose to do it. But I sort of see where you're coming from, because I think although I've been a commercial agent rather than a residential estate agent, there is something about it. You're out and about, you're not chained to the desk. You get to meet people. It's very, you get to look at properties, something good, something bad. It's fast paced. You get to do deals. It's fun. And what led you out of a estate agency? Presumably when you're in well, tell us about your progression in estate agency, and then how you sort of moved past it.
So although I was really enjoying it, I would get itchy feet because I'd feel like I kind of mastered this patch. I mastered what I was doing. So I'd spend a year learning the ropes and learning all the roads and learning this, that, and the other, and learning everything I could from the branch manager. Then the second year I'd boss it, and then I'd think, right, I need to move on to a different patch, or I need to move on, I need to progress. And I did that a couple of times, and I ended up in a really good independent in Stoke Newington. I didn't really like the corporate life where they would normally give you a package where you'd earn less money overall, but there would be room for career growth. I was like, no, just give me the money. I'll spend the money and I'll do what I want with it. And then also what I was learning as well along the way was the people that were making the most money within the estate agency were the developers, or that was my perception at the time. Of course, if you've got a massive chain of estate agents compared to a small time developer, that's not necessarily the case. But certainly the perception was I was chained at this desk 9 till 6 o'clock, whereas these developers would come in and come out, and they'd be free all day just to go out looking properties and take the rest of the day off or go on the golf course. And they'd all drive these very, very nice cars. So I was like, one day soon, I'm going to work out how to be on the other side of the desk. And that opportunity came shortly after I saved up a bunch of cash. My old man was like, don't spend it all. Either give it to your mum for safekeeping, or buy a property with it. Don't blow it all. And I literally had it earmarked to go and blow it in Ibiza. So I decided, okay, cool. I'm going to go and spend it. I'm going to go and invest it. Bought apartment, flipped it, and that was it. It was I got the bug. My old man, my mum brought some cash down from the northeast, and we just started doing more flips across North and East London, and then held on to a bunch of those. Started doing the landlord thing.
What time and what sort of year were we talking about here?
So I moved down to London in 2001. So shortly after that, got the job as an estate agent, and then literally the following year we started doing those flips right up until 2007.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that that was sort of the time. That was sort of the time that really the sort of flipper's paradise, wasn't it? Because LTVs were high, property prices were only going in one direction, interest rates were going down, or had come down, and you didn't have such high stamp duty as well. So especially
no 6 month rule. No. It was just like all of the above.
So you could just you declared it as your main the property as your main res. So for people that don't know, if a property is your main residence, you don't pay any tax on any gains that you make on it. So what were you doing? You were declaring it as your main res, and then effectively turning it and turning it.
These were self-certified mortgages, and these would be up to 90%. I mean, you could literally get over 100% mortgages, but we would go up to about 90%, and then and it was all self-certified. So you just put whatever you want on the piece of paper. That, funnily enough, after 2008, we went looking for that mortgage broker that got us all those loans, and you couldn't find him for love nor money. So not sure what happened to him, but.
Do you want to speculate?
No, yeah, probably enjoying his retirement. But we weren't the only ones doing that. There was loads of people. I mean, a lot of people refer to those days as the good old days. And
presumably, you focused on Stoke Newington because that was the patch that you were working in as an estate agent. That was where you had all of your relationships, and so was it easy to get deals in that area.
Well,
plus, you knew the market.
So it was Walthamstow where I first started. Which is when my first job as an estate agent started. And then it was around Hackney and Haringey, those boroughs. Hackney Wick in particular was a good one for us because literally the property was absolutely dirt cheap. Nobody really wanted to buy anything there.
No, I mean, there's an irony there, isn't it? Because that today, I mean, maybe you could give people a guide as to what something you would have bought in 20 years ago, 2004, what something you would have bought then, and what it would be worth now, what it would cost now.
Yeah, so we'd buy an apartment. Literally everything we were buying was pretty much £100,000. That was kind of the number. And then we'd spend anything between 20, 30,000, 40,000 if it was absolutely derelict. I mean, compared to the build cost today. And today they're worth 600,000.
That's mad, isn't it?
Six times
worth
in
6
20
times.
years.
Yeah, I mean, did you manage to hold on to any of them, or
yeah? So there was a whole bunch of ones that were just like too good. They felt like trophy assets. Obviously, they're not the Buckingham Palace or anything like that, but they felt like trophy assets to us. There was a vinegar factory conversion, which was absolutely beautiful. A beautiful kind of corner plot, end of terrace, absolutely beautiful with high ceilings and. So
that's like terraced house.
Yeah, exactly. So we held on to a bunch, and we were very thankful that we did, because those ones are the ones that have probably made us more money even than the flips did. And yeah, I mean, at that time doing those flips, even if we didn't do anything to those properties, they would have just gone up in value anyway.
Yeah.
So we were kind of forcing the value a little bit, and then the fact that we were able to hold on to them really kind of drove our wealth to the heights that we're at today.
Well, I guess. And so what? So. What changed? What led to you? What led to you sort of changing course then? So you were a developer. You said I would say the music stopped in 2007, 2008 because the finance got tricky. So what happened then? What did you do after? What did you do at that point?
So 2008 was a difficult year. So actually, so whilst I was spending the weekends as an estate agent on a Saturday, driving around people to their homes, and I got a little bit bored. I ended up moving into off-plan sales, working for a developer based out in Dubai, working out their office in Bank Street in Canary Wharf. So that developer's called Damac. So fortunately they're still around today. Yeah, they're still around today. And they had quite a large operation. I was one of the last kind of 10, 15 out of over 100 people that they had in the UK, whilst that thing was doing really well. And I was just painting and decorating on evenings. I was studying as well, getting my degree, because I ended up studying part-time. And by the time 2008 come around, 24 months I'd been working for this developer. And I could just see that the mood in the market was changing. Everyone wasn't as bullish as they once were, and getting investment. Like people were buying floors at a time from these developers in Dubai, and all of that just started getting worse and worse and harder. And on the day of Lehman Brothers going down, I was working on Bank Street. I came out of Canary Wharf Station, and I could see the film crews and the people coming out with boxes. And literally, 40 Bank Street's right next door to that building. So I went in, nobody would answer the phone, and then you start reading all the newsreels, and it was just on, BBC 24 had just come out and stuff, on Sky TV and all that. So everyone was saying it's going to get much worse before it gets better. It's the worst recession since the Depression in 1929. World War III is likely to happen now because of the meltdown in the economy and kind of depravity and all of this stuff. So I just thought, oh my God, I've just wasted my youth while all my friends have been spending all of their time doing, Dubai, well, not Dubai, but India and Australia and Brazil, and kind of like spending all their student loan money. I've been painting and decorating, driving people around houses, and now we're going to have another blitz in the UK, and all these properties are going to get bombed, and I've lost my youth. So I started having a little bit of a early life crisis about where I'm going with my life, and whether everybody around me has had a better life than I've had up to that point. So I needed a change. I didn't want to be in an office anymore. I wanted to change. And I went on a little bit of a soul searching tour. I ended up working for somebody else. I was just kind of jumping around from job to job. I think 2 jobs. They were more off-plan. I didn't last more than like a month or 2. I was questioning everything at that point. YouTube had just come out as well. So I was kind of watching it, going into rabbit holes about the economy and starting to kind of, the days of boom and bust were over. That was what Gordon Brown had only said a few years earlier. And I believed him, and I thought, oh my God, what a great time to be alive. I'm going to be a millionaire and all this stuff.
You believed a politician.
I believed a politician. Tony Blair went to the same school that I did growing up. So I was like bought into the whole new Labour movement and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so I believed a politician to my own detriment. And I had to do some soul searching. So by the time 2010 came around, I decided, right, I'm just going to wait till the market comes back. I'm going to take a year out. Go and do the traveling, so I haven't felt like I've missed out. Done well overall. Interest rates had collapsed. Rents had gone through the roof, a little bit like what's happened now, but the interest rate had gone down, and we were on these lifetime variables. So we had this huge profit margin at the end of every month. And because the mortgages weren't that much, given what the property values were at the time, we were able to start paying them off quite rapidly. So I took a year out. That year out was 3 months in Iran, which is where I was born, where my father's from. And my parents were in Iran at the time. So I decided, let me go and see my roots and see my family and practice the lingo and all that, which was great, which was really kind of eye-opening as well from a personal point of view. But then I ended up in Hong Kong it was supposed to be three months, and it ended up being 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
So my brother had been there 6 months before I arrived. I had a friend who kept on saying, come out and try and see what life's like here. It's a semi-tropical island. And I ended up getting a bar job, which was a general manager's position in one of the top nightclubs. So I started opening up kind of venues whilst we had the property portfolio here. Very different. And that was good because it was being an estate agent, being in what I call the goldfish bowl in a retail shop, morning, noon, and night. That was an experience in itself. But I needed something different to find myself and find the enthusiasm for property that I'd lost a little bit. Even though I was managing the stuff from long distance because I was the estate agent in the family. I was enjoying being over there. I almost got a job in an estate agency, but I thought, let me try something slightly different. It was a great experience, but by the time 2015 came around, I realized that the property markets bounced back and World War III didn't happen. And actually, these properties have gone up further in value. And by that time, we'd actually paid off all the loans as well. So we were sitting on this multi-million-pound portfolio where I decided, okay, we need to refinance and we need to go again. And that's when I came back to do exactly that.
So let's well, first of all, before we talk about your return to the UK, we mentioned off air that you quite like your podcast. So, I know you like. We talked about Joe Rogan, obviously, our viewers and listeners know that I'm a big fan, but also I've recently got into modern wisdom with was it Chris Williamson? I think he's from a similar part of the world to you as well. And he was he's now got he's got this huge podcast. He's now moved over to Texas, but he was a nightclub promoter in his 20s. So it's quite interesting that it's a very good experience. I think it's a very good experience, having being in that kind of, I want to say hospitality, but kind of lifestyle and events. And because I guess you become a lot of people's best friends very quickly, and it's probably a great way to meet new people, make relationships. But I imagine some of the relationships weren't maybe have been, some of them have been a bit disingenuous because their motivations may have been a little bit warped. But it was fascinating to hear about that. So you come back to the UK, and because you're thinking, right, the property market's on the up. So how do the next few years play out then?
Yeah, so I did a lot of soul searching, did a lot of studying, but I actually studied economics and sociology at A-level, and then did a little bit of that in my business degree. But I just started, we're in the information age, so all the information's out there, YouTube and all that sort of stuff. So I started doing a lot more research and realized actually this boom bust cycle thing is a thing, and you can't take it away with the way that the world works at the moment. And all it was a bust. It was a big one. And there's going to be a good time that rolls again. And we'd already kind of come out of it, and there'd been a store in the market. And I studied wealthy people and how they make their money, and how they make their money during both downturns and upturns. Everybody makes money when the market's good, but it's those that can make money in a downturn that really make the difference. So I started learning all of that sort of stuff, and I thought, okay, let me come back and put all of this into practice. And I promised myself, unlike how I did suffer through 2008, in terms of the investments, they were all absolutely fine. But my income that was based all on transactions in the market had literally diminished. And I was used to spending a certain amount of money, so that I, kind of quickly ran out of that money. And it was scary for a moment. So I just promised that would never, ever happen again. And in fact, the next time it comes around, I'll be fully ready, and I'm going to make the most of it, and I'm going to thrive through it. So that's what I did. And so it was a couple of pronged attack, which was firstly to refinance the portfolio and go again and do pretty much what we'd done in the past, although the market had changed significantly. So you couldn't just buy a property, do it up, and then rent it out as a single let. The yields just weren't there. The competition was incredible. We were on literally the millionth episode of Homes Under the Hammer to compete with. And so I had to spend about a year and a bit just doing a little bit of research to catch up with a few things. And all of the regulation as well that had increased as well around rentals and HMOs and fire safety standards and all that sort of stuff. But I quickly got the hang of it and just started and that's what I started looking for, high yielding income producing assets. So whether they be in London, which the yield's not great in London. So I had to go a bit further afield. So I started investing in Kent, started investing in Coventry in the West Midlands, and back up in the Northeast where I grew up, where the yields are still very good. And at that time I was single still, with no kids. Now I'm married with a kid. Doing all that traveling is not that easy anymore. But at the time I was literally just so motivated to go and build this high yielding income producing part. At the same time, I was looking for a trading business that I could start. Estate agency being the most obvious. And I actually got back into a estate agency, rekindled a relationship with one of my managers that I worked for back in 2005. And actually, he's now one of my partners in a bunch of properties that we own together, which is fantastic because I truly believe in long-standing relationships. But the evolution into the finance space was because as I was putting all these properties together, it wasn't a full-time job per se. Once you've bought the property, once the guys are on site, I'm not literally there myself doing all the work. Nice. Got a little bit more time on my hands. I could get more involved in the trading business that I was looking for, or to scale up the development stuff. That's actually how it really started. Anyway, I met this gentleman by the name of Mr. Paul Oberschneider, really, really interesting guy. And he said, I'm thinking about setting up a development finance provider or a lending business. And that way it's more scalable more quickly. We can get into development if that's what you want to do, but I want to do it on the lending side. I don't want to go out and wrestle with vendors and planning system and all that sort of stuff. Let's just find those operating partners and lend to them, which I thought actually in fairness, that's a better idea than mine in many ways. So let's do that. So we founded that business, Paul's business. I ended up being the head of origination. There was literally 3-4 of us that started it. And then that team grew to about 15 by the time I left. I stepped down from my position there 2.5 years ago and set up the finance brokerage. I'd had a kid by that time. I'd pretty much done what I set out to do, which is I set up this origination department. All the metrics would be measured, and we had a kind of repeatable process. And I just thought, being a broker, going back to my roots of being an estate agent, I think I'm better placed in matching the two people together than. And if I'm going to take risk at this stage in my career, it's with my own capital anyway. I just didn't want to start going down the funding lines and all that sort of stuff and building a lending business at that stage in my career.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There are plenty of people who think it's easy to think setting up a lender is easy, and certainly having longevity in the lending business is not easy at all. Speaking from experience, and actually, it's interesting you mentioned Paul, because I think we're trying to get Paul to come on the podcast as well. So
he's a great guy, super interesting, really, really good guy.
Yeah. So yeah, it's quite interesting that you feel like your personality is better suited, like you said, to sort of helping. Not so much Joe Public, but helping some sort of consumer get what they want and what they need, rather than being, I suppose, the principal in a large business, essentially. So in terms of brokering now, so you set up Merryoaks just yourself, and now how many of you are there, or how's the business model operate? Because obviously we've talked to a few of your peers, and there are different ways of skinning the cat.
Yeah. So I actually started out with a couple of guys who've got their own brokerage, but after 12 months, we did well in the first 12 months. They were super busy running their own brokerage, and it just didn't make sense. So we came to an agreement on buying back the shares. But their support in the first 12 months was valuable. So I thank them for that. Everyone that I've come across, I've been very, very blessed, to be honest, along my journey, from my best friend's dad to my parents to Paul, who I learned a lot from. I've always been able to take the good from a lot of the people that I've been fortunate enough to surround myself with. But it was the idea we were going to do it. We were going to do it bootstrapped. So there was two ways to do it. Yeah, I either would get a big fund of £100,000 or $200, a lot more money than that, and take a big office somewhere, fill it with loads of brokers, and then hope for the best almost. Or bootstrap with next to nothing, start it small, and see how we go. And personally, I don't like to start with loads of debt or loads of overheads. I just think people, I don't know, that particular business model over the last 20 years, I've just seen more people fail doing it that way than the way that we decided to do it. And the beauty of, I didn't want to have a big crash landing in case things didn't work out. Although you're super optimistic, you're always super nervous as well about things going wrong. So bootstrapped operation, it was literally just myself and those two guys in the background helping me. As you know, I post a lot on LinkedIn, and because of being in the industry for as long as I have and doing a lot of networking, especially between 2015 and 2020, 21, when I started, I built up a good network of people. So when I announced that I was doing my own brokerage, I did get a huge influx of inquiries, too many for me to handle as one person. So I've quickly scrambled to get the first person on board. First 6 months was an absolute nightmare. Just setting everything up from scratch, and kind of and finding my way through it all, and then with next to no money, so not really hiring the right people as well. Probably that was a learning. But the next 6 months was fantastic, and we've had a pretty good ride. The only other time that because it's a startup, you have a little bit of the feast famine thing, and you've got the external constraints, things like Liz Truss's mini budget didn't help at the time. That kicked a lot of deals either out of bed, but more so they just kicked them down the line. So you're still working on the same deals over and over, taking calls, doing the administration around them, when you can't start advising on new ones because they're sucking up all your time and energy. So that was frustrating. The last 3 months have been a very similar situation. But we're now 3 full-time members. We've got some admin assistants, VAs, and marketing. So we've got the whole business set up. We've outsourced a few bits and pieces here and there to make it kind of cost-effective and cost-efficient. But 3 full-time members. And effectively what we're doing really well is I do most of the development stuff. George does most of the bridging and commercial stuff. And Harvey does all the buy-to-let. We don't really do any residential mortgages, apart from when they're for our clients, who they're existing clients. We can do those things for them as well, but that's not really what we go out and market ourselves for. So we've got a good team.
For those people who don't know the business model, doing residential mortgages is very commoditized these days, and it doesn't pay particularly well. Could you just talk people through why specialist finance brokerages prefer to avoid residential mortgages as a general rule?
Yeah, I mean, for a start, the fees are very, very low. So whilst on a commercial term loan or bridging or development, you can earn 1% of the loan amount, your typical residential mortgage, you'll earn 0.33, so a third. So you've got to work 3 times as hard to do the same amount of work, to make the same amount of money. However, it's not quite true as well, because I think there's a lot more work that goes into a commercial term loan and a development loan and and bridging and those sorts of things. But I think it depends on how the broker themselves is built internally. I think that it's almost quite methodical doing a residential mortgage. Everything is kind of regulated and in a certain way that you need to have everything, and it's all very, very tick box. Whereas you can be a little bit more creative, you can have a little bit more finesse and flair when you're doing bridging development. And I think that depending on your personality, I think you'll gravitate to one or the other.
Yeah. So if you like things sort of, as the Germans say, alles in Ordnung, you like everything kind of just in its place, you're probably more likely to be into residential mortgages. If you're someone who's maybe a bit more creative, a little bit more entrepreneurial, then sort of commercial bridging development would be more for you, I suppose. Yeah. So you're three full time at the moment. So you have sort of a target for how much you want to, how many loans or what volume of loans you want to originate this year or this financial year?
Yeah. I mean, with a small team like that, I think if we can hit the 50 million mark, would have done very, very well. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're.
Yeah. And what's the aspiration? Where are you going? What's the sort of what are you hoping to achieve?
So interesting. So we have end of the year. We have every quarter we have a meeting amongst the team where I share my views and vision on where we're going and what we're trying to do and why we're doing what we do. Actually, because I think sometimes rocking up to work and just I remember when I was an estate agent. And I would show people these really grotty 1-bedroom apartments, and these were like 70,000, 80,000 pounds, and they were really, really run down and really awkward. And I used to look at my branch manager, and go this is crazy that anyone's going to pay that amount of money for this stuff. And he said, "Sam, we're selling dreams."
Brilliant.
And I was like,
brilliant.
Okay, I can buy into that. And he didn't say anything more, but I started kind of thinking, okay, what is the dream? Like, people are imagining becoming a homeowner. People are imagining the property price going up in value. People are imagining accumulating wealth. People are imagining becoming, getting married, having kids, raising a family. I was like, all right, I can buy into that rather than me just doing a viewing and rocking up and opening a door and closing a door. I could imagine them going to work and what their commute looks like and all this sort of stuff. So what's the mission? That's the most important thing, I think, that really gets me excited, that gets me motivated. And it's a little bit cliched, you might say as well, but it's solving the affordable housing crisis. We've got a chronic housing shortage in this country, which is causing all kinds of havoc for many, many years. We're supposed to build 300,000 new homes for the last per year for the last 20 years, and we're not getting anywhere near that. I think we're kind of averaging 150 to 200,000 max. And we've had 13 housing ministers in 13 years. We've got people like this guy called Nick Bano. I don't know if you've come across him, this barrister, who's basically saying landlords should be humiliated and give it all to the state. We're in a bit of a mess at the moment. Planning takes forever. So what can I do as a little drop in the ocean, as a little token to push things in the right way? And I believe that to do property deals, to create housing, to create homes, you need one of three things. Well, all three, to be honest, but you need to be able to do at least one of three things to be able to provide any value to the market. One is to be able to provide the land, so being estate agent, commercial agent, or the land of the building. Two is having the skill set to be able to add value to it through planning, through an architecture or a planning consultant or solicitors, legal, conveyancing, that sort of thing, or have the money, have access to the capital. So I just chose that, okay, my value add in the value chain is going to be through providing finance to investors and developers who want to be able to create new spaces to be able to provide for people to work, rest, and play.
Well, I do love that, and I have to say that's also been one of our central, core values, mission statements, if you call it what you will, within Avonmore. We've always been wanted to help with the housing crisis. Look, at the end of the day, we're a business, we want to make money, etc. But if we're going to talk about sort of higher, loftier aims and loftier goals, very shared, very much shared vision in terms of mission, as far as wanting to help alleviate the housing crisis. You mentioned Tony Blair, New Labour. Ironically, as many of our viewers and listeners know, I'm an Arsenal fan, and I was on my way to the Emirates Stadium on Tuesday night for our thumping 5-0 win over Chelsea. Chelsea fans, my apologies, but you had it coming. And I saw Keir Starmer actually across the road, because he's an Arsenal supporter, and obviously it's in sort of his constituency. By the way, I was actually really surprised. He's not that tall.
He looks very tall.
Yeah, he does, but he's actually not that tall. But then I think compared to Rishi Sunak, he's still quite tall. But okay. Anyway, so I digress. But of course, we're looking at potentially a change of government very soon, at least this year. What's your take on Labour and housing? Do you think are you still kind of at heart a Labour supporter, and particularly Starmer's brand of Labour, and do you think that Labour will be a good thing for housing? I
think it's a difficult one to say. I think that he has steered back. It's quite interesting that he seems to be quite buddy up with Tony Blair, and has moved away from the kind of Jeremy Corbyn type faction of Labour, and he's coming back into the centre. And I think when I studied Tony Blair for many years as well, he always said you can't win an election from the fringes on the outside. You have to win it from the centre. So I think he's had to come into the centre to be able to win the election. And I think there's a very good chance that there will be a change of government, and it'll be a Labour government. Whether it's a good or bad thing, I don't know. I think that sometimes market forces and the general population are just going to kind of push us into a particular direction where already even the Tory government have put all these Renters Reform Act in place. I don't think that he's going to want to bash landlords. Not much. I mean, there's not much more you can do apart from what this guy Nick Banner is talking about, which is like literally humiliating landlords and making them shameful for everything that they do. I just think it's going to be more or less more of the same of what we've got right now. They're going to try and dampen the accidental landlord, the person that's got one or two, especially in their personal names, and they're probably going to have a drive towards institutional build-to-rent type models, and give them the tax breaks to incentivize them to build more housing in the UK.
So yeah, I think I agree with you. I think I agree with you on that sort of that institutionalization of landlords. I do get the impression that Labour understands the importance of landlords. It's something I think that they've got horribly wrong in Scotland with the with the attempts at rent controls and things like that. Which it's funny is a sort of this socialist panacea that this idea that, well, if you try to control rents, then you make rents more affordable. But I guess what happens is landlords leave the market, take properties out of the market, sell them, and they go to private owners, and then there's no rental stock for people, and that's what drives what drives these huge shocks in rent.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest fear is rent control, because I own a bunch of properties, and if they start capping the amount of rent that we can put up, then all that happens is I don't really want to do work to the property because I can't afford it, because I can't put my rents up accordingly, or I mean, it depends on what caveats they put in, but generally, wherever rent caps have been in place, you find low. Like I think it was in Edinburgh just recently, there was something like 150 inquiries for one particular property because I mean, it's just crazy. And then also the quality of the stock just goes down. So you might be able to have stock available, but the quality of it as well, so what you're getting for your money is just crap.
Yeah, because there's no choice. In terms, I suppose, with your development hat on, what do you think about their proposals about the green belt, grey belt? Do you think, are you more hopeful about the planning side reforms with Labour coming into power?
No.
Okay, I like it. We don't get many spicy hot takes, so let's go. I want to hear this.
I just think it's a spaghetti junction of a mess, and I don't know what exactly the solution is going to be. I mean, if they say that they're going to build on the green belt, there's going to be a lot of pushback. I think that the solution would be, yes, to actually start building new towns in and around, a handful of new towns in and around some major cities. But I just think that I think it's a good policy, but getting it through and all the pushback that comes from it, all these NIMBYs, I just think it's not going to be as easy as they might make it sound.
I personally think that they might have their policies might be well intentioned, but I think it's one of the issues with the left more generally is that the left has, if you've ever heard the expression, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think that's where I think that their good intentions end up being their undoing. I personally, I'm all for seeing, elements of the green belt that aren't particularly worth preserving being taken out of the green belt. Yeah. My worry personally is that they'll give with one hand, they will give, and they will take away with the other by enforcing environmental requirements and policies. I suppose biodiversity net gain, water net neutrality, all this kind of stuff that goes alongside or goes into these planning applications. And so whilst they'll make it easier to build on greenbelt land, they'll make it harder in another way by imposing a higher threshold, a higher bar on the environmental side. Whether that's the right thing to do or not, that's not for debate. But I think ultimately, like you said, planning is so complex now. I think the planning application for a new bridge across the Thames, there was 350,000 pages of documents. I mean, if you're a plan, we all know that our planning departments are, frankly, utter clusterfuck. You can swear on this podcast, just so you know. And as a consequence, and then imagine dropping that on a planning officer's desk, 350,000 pages worth of documentation. No wonder we can't build anything of any form of infrastructure in this country. It's an absolute joke. It's
planning. Unfortunately, from my point of view, it's something that I literally don't have the answer for at all. I just know. I think the problem. I think it's the start of the problem needs to be fixed by putting people that do know about property development, that do know about how these things work, in the right positions at the right. The fact that we've had 13 housing ministers in 13 years and none of them have got a background in property or property development, I just think that's, start with having the right people in the room to solve the problem. We'll have a chance. And I mean, between the pair of us, we can probably elect, a good 10 people that would be better candidates than the 13 that they've had.
Yeah, including one of our past guests, Mihir Mehta, who used to be a planning officer, now a property developer with over £100 million worth of units in his portfolio. And yeah, I think he would solve the housing crisis pretty quickly if you got him in place. And
I think also the private sector needs to. Because I think if you put too much emphasis on the state to be able to provide the housing based on the projects or the council estates that they've made, or just any kind of state-run operation, wherever in the world, whichever country you're looking at, it's always run it inefficiently. There's always a level of corruption, and what the output is just really, really inefficient and ugly usually. So I think that the private sector needs to be incentivized to provide the majority of that. Those are my two things. Get the right people in place and get the private sector incentivized in the right way.
Yeah, completely agree. Changing tack a little bit. So you're based down in Portsmouth. Now, are you most of your clients in that region, or you actually get, or do you have clients all over the country?
Yeah, all over the country, and I wouldn't have it any other way, because although I'm based most of my life in London, I'm from the Northeast, and all different parts of the country require these affordable housing, and they all bring like different quirks.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's good. So you definitely get the miles in then to go and visit clients and visit sites.
Yes, exactly.
Especially being kind of at the bottom end of the country.
Yeah. So when I was in London, it was a lot easier. London is kind of the epicenter of everywhere, but being in Portsmouth is a lot more challenging. And especially with a kid now, and I just turned 41 a few weeks ago, and I'm like, I don't really like sitting in the car so I'd get the train.
Yeah.
Most places these days, and that's another. I mean, we won't go into that, but yeah, the train.
No, I definitely can sympathise with you, because with my Tesla, I can drive into central London. But if I'm driving into central London, I can drive into central London relatively inexpensively. But if I'm driving, I can't work, or I certainly can't sit in front of the computer. So although I found a little bit of a hack where, it does encourage you to pick up the phone a bit more. And I mean, look, again, we are almost the same age, but we sort of grew up in an era where you couldn't just hide behind a text. You couldn't hide behind an email. I mean, maybe we were just at the start of that, but it was still very much a phone call based, phone call, landline, fixed line in your house. I don't even have one of those anymore. Kind of cultures. So with your team, do you find do you find that it's more effective actually to be able to pick up the phone rather than dropping texts and emails? And do you, for the younger members of staff, do you find it a bit of a challenge to get them to actually pick up the phone rather than, do the usual send an email?
Absolutely. So communications, it kind of falls under that umbrella, and one of the, we as a service provider, being a brokerage, we don't really have a physical product. So everything that we do is purely communications. How do we communicate one thing from one person to another? And normally it's a bit of Chinese whispers as well, if we don't want the message to get lost in transition. So what I share with the team is that there are various modes of communication these days. And as good brokers, in my opinion, we've got to be able to use all of them at the right time in the right way. So phone calls, absolutely, they are your number one. They're the ones that the relationship builders. And in today's world as well, video calls all the more as well, which help actually Merryoaks being a national company. We can do deals and invest that kind of quality time, face-to-face time with a client who is at the other end of the country a lot more than we would have been able to do 20 years ago. But at the same time, we do use WhatsApp. And then you've got WhatsApp text message, you've got WhatsApp voice notes as well. And then
love a voice note.
Yeah, exactly. And also you can send photos and videos and quick stuff. And so if it's something quick and easy and quick and dirty, you want to just do on a quick WhatsApp. Sometimes we get our clients to be on a group WhatsApp as well. So especially if we've got 2 or 3 deals going on at the same time with them, and there might be 2 or 3 of us working on different things. One of them is doing a buy-to-let, and to exit a development, I'm working on the development. We just kind of get everybody in one place, because on the emails, that's between the solicitors and that's between the lenders, and that's an email chain for that. We want to have our own little private chat. So there's a variety of different ways that you can communicate in this day and age, and we have to be able to use all of them at the right time.
Yep, no, I think that's really really good, and obviously as part of the communication piece, nice little segue there. We were talking just before we started about the Property People podcast. So you were saying you're a little bit nervous because you're on the other side of the microphone for once. So far you're doing great from what I can see. So yeah, clearly a natural, both in front of the camera and in front of the microphone. What got you into what prompted the podcast? Why did you do it? And have you, is it a good way of getting clients and leads?
Well, firstly, I'm going to extend an invitation for you to come on Property People so you can sit on the other side of the desk as well.
Okay, I'll accept that. I accept that immediately. Okay, let's go.
I set up Property People purely because I was doing a lot of networking in between 2015 and 2021. I was hitting up an origination department, so I'd meet as many people as possible, whether they be brokers or developers or anyone that was a developer, great. Anyone that's not a developer is an introducer, and that was kind of my mindset. So everybody has value, and I truly believe that in every way, shape, or form. So I set up Property People because it's literally 2 of my favorite things, and I think that I was thinking that, okay, I'm going to go out and meet lots of people. I'm going to spend an hour with them as well. So video calls as well before 2020 weren't really a thing, actually. So a lot of coffees. I was talking to you about how I drink decaf nowadays because probably had too many coffees already. So meeting them for an hour, and I always have a great relationship, always have a great conversation, and then say, right, we'll meet up in another time, or we'll keep in touch, or you go on an email list and stuff, and we'll keep in touch in some way, shape, or form. Conversation was super interesting in some instances. And being a Joe Rogan fan from back when YouTube first came out and he was doing isolation tanks and talking about DMT and all this other cool stuff, and then seeing how he'd progressed, I thought, maybe I should try it out and put it all together and see where it goes. So I've kept the first one that I ever did. It was it was just not very well put together, basically. It was my brother's apartment. It was with a really good guy called Joe White, who's also a broker.
Ramsey and White.
Yes. And you just tell the quality is really bad. So I'm sorry, Joel, that wasn't there at the time. But over time, so it's almost one of those things where it was a labor of love and something that I'm passionate about, something that I thought would help everybody around the table. We're having the conversation anyway, stick a camera in it and a microphone and let's go. And start now, get perfect later. And that's literally the way it's gone.
I like that. Start now, get perfect later. So how many episodes in are you now? Like, how frequently do you record? How often do you release episodes?
So we try to do 3 a month. We try and fill them all in the same day, just because for time
practical.
Yeah, exactly, practical. So we get morning, noon, and afternoon. And then it's just shy of 1 a week. And then there's I've got a partner full time that helps me with all the distribution. We've got a videographer and all that sort of stuff. I do actually I don't consider it as work. Probably a good thing because it doesn't make any money either. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and so far everybody that's been on it, hopefully you'll be feeling the same as enjoyed it as much as I'm enjoying this.
So how many years have you been doing it for now?
5 years.
5 years. Okay, so that's really fascinating. I don't know if you've listened to the Joe Rogan with Tucker Carlson.
I did. I listened to the whole thing.
And he said 5 years, right? So he said it took 5 years before he was able to make. And I thought that was really fascinating. You probably know who Gary Vaynerchuk is as well. And I remember he used to joke that his early Wine Library TV videos, he likened them to like an ISIS kidnap video, just like the video quality. And it kind of, I'm a bit earlier on in this journey, we've been doing this for a year now, and it sort of made me a little bit more, that we're sort of getting more and more pro with the setup and trying to get, with looking at studios, we haven't got perfect audio equipment, we haven't got perfect soundproof room. We've actually used a lighting rig for the first time today, for example, and after cycling lots of different camera options, we've ended up with an iPhone, and we'll probably have a few more iPhones, stuff like that. But that Gary Vaynerchuk, I'm sure the listeners and viewers don't, that they're probably less interested in the business of podcasting and the technical side of podcasting. But I think the lesson there is, I think what you sort of said, it's like basically don't let perfect be the enemy of good, and you've kind of just got to make your start, and you got to put one foot in front of the other, and I guess the flip side of it as well is that you get with things like a podcast, you get to punch well above your weight, and I think that both from your side as on the brokerage side, and I think Avon was always punched above its weight, brand and profile wise, as well. And I think things like podcasts, which give you the ability to go into a broader, wider audience, it does change the game a little bit, and it does take you into a different stratosphere that maybe you wouldn't have occupied if you weren't as well known.
I totally agree, and it has helped me. And I think anyone that's been doing it for long enough has said pretty much the same thing. The catch is not everybody enjoys it or is committed to it. And just like anything, if you're not consistent, then unfortunately you're going to probably spend a lot of time and effort and energy, and then it'll fizzle out and go nowhere. I'm very lucky that I'm in a position where I can do things which I really enjoy that don't necessarily make loads of money, but do it anyway. And I'm just absolutely obsessed with property in general. So anything property related is helpful.
Yeah. So, and how in terms of in terms of your investing, the investments that you're doing or you were doing, are you still investing on the side as well with alongside the brokerage?
So I had to put a pause on it. It was literally just ran out of time. But by the time you were spending morning, noon, and night, literally into the night, one of the deals we've done together at Ambermore, actually, I was literally up till 1 a.m. putting everything together because we literally had to get it done in like four weeks or so. So when I got the inquiry in, I had to do that. But the time is coming around now that the team has built a little bit. I've got a little bit more time back, only a little bit more, and I've started to look at doing more deals again. And over that last 2.5 years, apart from focusing 100% of my time on my clients to make sure that they get the service that they require and deserve, I've been finding a new area to invest in, which is the South Coast in Hampshire, in Portsmouth, where I moved. My in-laws lived down there. During COVID, I was spending nearly £3,000 a month on rent, going nowhere. And then the year after, I had a baby as well. So nearly 2 years of just spending this money on rent and being like not going out and enjoying the bars and the clubs and the restaurants and stuff. So I just decided that it would be a good idea as well to get the support from the family, especially we've got a new business, to reduce my costs, live on the coast, and in doing so, I found another area that I could invest in. So I've been doing a lot of research. I've had a few, been gazumped or gazunded. I've, lost a few deals along the way that I haven't been trying as hard as I should to be able to get those deals. When I first got my first deals in 2017, I'd looked at 550 different opportunities to buy my first flurry of kind of HMOs that I bought. And these were all be buy, rent, refurbish, refinance type deals. So I'd be doing like £100,000 worth of work on each of them. I've just got my time back, just starting to know the area. I would like to do about a year and a half worth of research into an area before I start buying it. And I've just got there now.
Yeah, and I guess hopefully kind of the combination of the market rents going up, prices being reasonably flat, and then interest rates going down means that that BRR strategy can kind of come back into the fore. Because I think one of the things that we talk about strategically is that I think bridging volumes, refurb volumes are going to be a bit more suppressed compared to maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago and beyond, just because the exit to the buy-to-let still doesn't really make enough sense for most investors. So I guess you're going to, hopefully your time is going to be absolutely spot on with a sort of the gradual fall of interest rates and, higher rents and, yields being, making sense all of a sudden.
Yeah. I mean, timing is really, really important. And if you time things right, you look like a genius and everything kind of works better than it even should do on paper. But then with what I went through in 2008, the whole, is it time in the market or is it the timing of the market's more important? What's your thoughts?
I think time in I mean, they're both important, but time in the market is probably the most important thing. I don't tend to invest in residential properties. I tend to invest in commercial, or have a history of investing in commercial property. And in hindsight, I wish I hadn't flipped the deals that we flipped from sort of 2013 or 2011 to 2015, 16 that we bought. I wish we hadn't flipped them, but a lot of the cash came out and went into Avonmore's lending. So we obviously built this fantastic lending business on the back of family capital that we put into that. We've now gone again and made 3 investments. The most recent one, which completed a month ago, we bought something off an institution. They paid £9.5 million for it. We paid just over £5 million for it. 14% reversionary yield. Good tenant mix. At the end of the day, if I was in their position, I wouldn't sell and hold on to it. It's a great asset. It's a really lovely town between London and between sort of halfway between Portsmouth and London, and so I'm really pleased with it. Having said that, so it's kind of a combination. That's why I said a combination of the two. I've got a great deal because we timed it really well. On the other hand, I think the stuff that I bought 10 years ago, I'd have been very happy. I could have just held it. One of the things that I bought 2 years ago, probably just before the trust budget, you could argue I maybe at the moment have paid too much for it. But I know that if I'm not planning to sell that anytime soon, and unless someone's going to pay me silly money for it, and I know that in 10 years' time, I mean, it's a building in Staines. At the moment, resi values in Staines are 650 quid a foot. I know that it's an office to resi deal, a conversion all day long. I know that in 5 years' time, resi values in Staines are going to be 800 quid a foot, probably, right? Because you've got Berkeley, you've got London Square, you've got you've got train to London in half an hour. It's so right now, and maybe I'm not looking at a site that's worth as much, but I know that 5 years' time, 10 years' time, pay the mortgage, keep paying the mortgage, take a little bit of cash out, and I know 5 to 10 years' time, I'd be like, I'm really glad I held on to that, and I didn't panic, and I didn't rush into, do anything crazy on that. And so yeah.
A little bit of both, really.
It's basically both.
It's basically both. And I think that's been my big learning. When things are going really well, the market's going up, happy days, everyone's making money. When things are going down, you just got to change your approach slightly.
Yeah.
But there's lots of opportunity to be had as well. And if you're, especially with property, again, that first manager gave me a lot of like one-liners, but that still ring true today. And one of them was that property is a marathon, not a sprint. So you're looking at 5-year horizons for GDVs and Staines to go up from 600 to 800. If you've got that patience and you've got that ability to have that foresight, I think that you'll always make money in property. So for me, I take a long-term view always with everything. I try to, because I think that the majority of the wealth that we've created has been just by buying and holding long-term. So that's...
especially if you've still got some of the assets that you bought in Stoke Newington area from 20 years ago. I mean, yeah, 100%.
Then so it's all about being able to hang on to it and being able to weather the storms of regulation, which is always difficult to see coming. But then they give you the heads up of the Renters Reform Act and see if you kind of weather that. Interest rate hikes was the one that I knew that was going to come from 2015 because interest rates couldn't be any lower for much longer. They were only going to go one way, and that's why I went down the route of HMOs, and I do a lot of service accommodation stuff as well. Just because I know that the yields are super high, even though they're a pain in the ass to manage sometimes. What's happened is the costs have gone up, interest rate, the holding operational costs. But because the margin's been so good, I've been able to hang on to those assets, still make a profit, and go again.
Anyway, so where were we? So. Let's talk about your recent LinkedIn post. Seeing as we were on the subject of social media, you went and named and shamed a lender, or at least I saw it yesterday. Maybe you posted a few days before. We don't need to name them here, but what do they do wrong, and how do we stay on the right side of you and Merryoaks? Because I don't want to be on the receiving end of your ire, especially with your vast audience.
Yeah, it was yesterday, and you know what? The reaction has been, it caused quite a stir, and it's not something that I'm incredibly proud of, or that I would say this is going to be, it's common practice from here on. It came with a lot of thought and a lot of pressure and strain that's happened, I think, across the industry, for a lot of brokers that are feeling very much the same way. So I sometimes, I'm active on social media, on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, and I like to share my thoughts on the industry. I think we've got a great industry. I'm super passionate about property, and I want everyone to be able to have that's the whole point of social media, that everyone's got a voice. These are observations more so than anything else. And what has happened over the last, let's say, about 18 months, more so than any time before, I just get more and more brokers and borrowers telling me the same stories over and over again. And everybody is absolutely scared to mention the names of the lenders that they work with. And if you do hear them, it's literally on a private phone call where everyone's looking over their shoulder. If you're in a public space, they're kind of, again, looking at it. And it's just, so I thought, right, so what I could do is I could go to Google or Trustpilot, and I could just leave a review there, and it's in the public domain. So what's the difference? I think the point that particular post that we're talking about, which I was thinking you might have forgotten about, we wouldn't talk about. But since we're talking about it, that was an extreme case. And I think that's why I did what I did, because it happened about 2 years ago when we first started out. And there was a couple of little cases, but I just wanted, when I spoke to a couple of brokers about it privately, they said, oh, well, that lender, yeah, of course. And I was like, oh, bloody hell. There's only a place that nobody bothers putting stuff on Google or Trustpilot, just kind of goes nowhere. So we set up a little private group of brokers, and we kind of kept in touch, but not really. And we put a few things on there, but then everyone kind of goes about their day. But then over the last 18 months, I've been hearing it more and more and more, and everyone's struggling with this, that, and the other. And this particular lender, possibly the wrong time, wrong place. It was the
I have to say, I've never heard of them. They don't have you weren't able to tag them on LinkedIn, so they're obviously.
I didn't tag them on purpose, but I mean, not that it was thing. I didn't tag them on purpose, but they're a smaller lender. And I think that everyone just needs to be a bit more careful with the way that they approach their business, making promises that they can't keep. Yeah. And I think that's generally, I think sometimes lenders will present a full case, and it will say, this person has an outstanding credit to a creditor or a bank, and we want this not to have to be settled upon completion. And we state that from the outset as part of the inquiry, and then 5-6 weeks later, it's like, oh, we need that to be settled. It's like, oh, that's really frustrating because we told you about that. We probably wouldn't have gone down this route if that was the case. That's not the end of the world. It's not a crime, but it's annoying.
Just to interrupt you, because I think in that situation, lenders always want to be on the front foot, want to give you fast terms, who don't want to have to do a full underwrite at that point, because if you haven't secured the client, you want to be there with some dips or whatever, which you can help hopefully secure the client with. And yeah, sometimes that kind of thing can get overlooked.
And again, it's like I said, it's not the crime of the century. And then there's like slow turnaround times, the slow SLA. It's like, okay, we'll get your credit back terms by Friday, and it's the following Friday instead. What I don't want to start a trend of like everybody naming shame that you've done this and they've done that. That's a little bit unnecessary. And having been a lender, I know how that goes, and it is challenging. And some people have been calling. The feedback that I've had has been quite incredible. We've had literally hundreds of brokers telling me that I want to join this group where we can talk openly and freely. It's been completely nuts. But I completely understand where they're coming from as well, because of the sheer level of frustration. Because it's an unregulated market. And some people are actually calling for it to be regulated. Now, I don't believe that that's the right thing to do either, because I think we need more.
We know plenty of regulated lenders that behave abominably, particularly when at the end of loan terms. And charging crazy fees. So I don't necessarily think regulation is the answer.
No, and regulation just creates more red tape, and it'll cut out
and less borrower options as well.
Which will increase prices as well for developers who are already struggling anyway. So I don't think that's the right thing. I think there can be a little bit of self-regulation. I mean, that's what Google reviews and Trustpilot's things are supposed to be there for. But again, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not here to kind of like completely destroy the market or anything like that. What this particular lender did that really tipped it over the edge, I think we need to be able to cut out some of these sorts of practices, which was promised us in a 2-week period that we can get the loan done. It took a little over 3 weeks, not the end of the world. We needed to get it done very quickly. And that's not the problem. We did all of that, jumped through all the hoops. We did the application, we did the legals, we did the underwriting, provided absolutely everything. On the day of completion, they just said, oh, sorry, we've had a change of our loan criteria and appetite, and therefore we need to pull out. Something to that effect.
Yeah, I mean, that's shocking. I mean, do you have any suspicions as to why they did that?
My suspicion, and it's only a suspicion, so I don't want anyone to kind of come after me making false claims or anything like that, but I think they ran out of money. I just genuinely think that they're a small lender and they just ran out of money. But the thing is, sometimes when you mess things up, it's about how you do that, what you do next, which will determine whether people will shake your hand in the street or kind of do business with you again at some later stage. the way that they went about it was just totally outrageous.
And they basically avoided your phone calls, wouldn't communicate.
Yeah, the BDM, bless him, he was very, very, very sweet. And he was the reason why I was doing the deal with this particular lender in the first place, because I've borrowed from one of the, I believe one of the companies he'd worked for in the past personally. And we'd gotten really well. And he'd been for 9 months knocking down my door, as most good BDMs will do, saying, come on, send us some inquiries. So this particular one, it was the right time, right place. I think he gave us a call and we said, right.
Was it a tricky case? Or?
Not at all. It was like a layup. So it was all about driven around price and speed. If you can get it done in 2 weeks, everyone else at the lower cost will be saying 3-4 weeks to get this bridge done. But we can do it in 2 weeks all day long because it's our money, it's private money. We'll just have to kind of like look at it. And I was like, okay, that's fine. What's the pricing look like? Pricing was very reasonable. I did actually tell the borrower, because I think another broker put on, was like, well, why did you send a vanilla case to some unknown entity? There's always a reasonable explanation. And part of what I've just explained is part of it, but I also told the borrower at the time, we've never worked with this lender before. So there's an element of risk.
Some of it was also, so it wasn't necessarily your fault. You were in the sense that the borrower knew, and they took the risk.
We all took the risk. I recommended it, so I put my hand up as well. I can't say I wouldn't never do that to my client and say, it's all entirely on you. You chose it. I put it in front of you to make that decision. But this particular BDM was saying for the last 9 months we've been putting out loads of money and it's going to be fine. And it sometimes happens. Now, I just think that, and there's a whole bunch of reasons behind the curtain as to why that particular lender might have run out of money. They might have been cut off from one of their bank accounts in another country, so they didn't see it coming, and it's how they reacted to it as well, which I think that what's the bottom line of all of this, and why do brokers get so upset about it more so than even the borrowers, who are actually the ones out of pocket with the legal fees and the valuation fees and the time, and then going into more expensive lender and having all these default costs and all that other stuff that they have to actually bear the brunt of it. The brokers are, because some of these lenders think that they're kind of like, they're doing us a favor by even putting the capital in front of us in the first place, and I think that level of arrogance, sometimes whether it's genuine or not, sometimes it just comes across the wrong way. And on this particular instance, the reason why I did what I did is because I have very little doubt that that's literally what just happened, because of the way that they reacted. When I got the number of the chap that I called up, he was more bothered about GDPR and how I got his telephone number, and said, speak to your BDM, as if he's the one that's calling the shots and made this happen. If I had a reasonable reason as to why this happened, other than you've just changed your criteria on such a vanilla deal, I could have gone back to my client and actually given him some reasonable explanation, but I didn't even have that. So it's just all a bit of a shitstorm. And it turns out I'm not the only one. I've literally had a call on the way to this office today, to the studio today, from another lender, from another from another broker, from another small lender, said, don't use these guys because they've done a very similar thing. They've raised £25 million, which is not a lot of money in the work that we do. And they've been doing like 1 million to 2, 3, 4, 5 million pound loans, and they've run out of cash already. And we nearly struggled with them, but they were able to get called another loan and make it happen. But we had to go down the route of like speaking to a vendor and paying a little bit more money to them and a whole bunch of other stuff, just because they were over promising and delivering. And it's just got to stop.
Yeah, I think due diligence on lenders has become, particularly on how they're funded, is increasingly important for brokers with the way that the specialist finance market has become fragmented. I sort of see, it's difficult. It's difficult as a broker, especially in an environment that we're in like right now, where obviously vanilla bridging is one thing, right? That's still very easy to fund, but you've now got, I've seen well-known broker that I like a lot, saying, basically putting a clarion call out, is anyone doing ground up development lending? If you are, can you give me a shout? That wouldn't have been you wouldn't have had to do that 2-3 years ago. And obviously with the lack of options at the moment, as in certain pockets of the market, you're having to, that's an opportunity for lenders. I go and see some of the big packages, or I used to go and see some of the big packages or well-known names in the market and be like, can we start doing some business? He said, well, look, you can't have this. You can't have basically the stuff that you want to do. You can't have it because I give it to X, Y, and Z. So, okay, fine. You can't, but you can have the weird stuff that you can't fund anyway. I'm like, okay, great. Okay, cool. Well, anyway, it was nice having a coffee with you, and we'll see you soon. But it's these sort of difficult markets where you have the opportunity to sort of break into these relationships that you couldn't do, because for the most part, most brokers won't take a chance on a lender they haven't worked with before. In this situation, you're obviously you're under a lot of scrutiny from the client. The client might feel that they don't want to use you again because of the experience that they've had that wasn't your fault, but they automatically associate you with the failed deal.
Yeah, and it's the thing is, when you say it's not my fault, I totally take full responsibility for it, in terms of I suggested it and therefore it is on me. And that's why I think, and because I'm so passionate, and because I've been a developer myself as well, and like kind of feel, I've been in the ring with these guys, and I've felt every punch and blow that they take when things don't go quite right. I just want there to be some better practices in an unregulated space. And I just think there's somebody else that wrote as well, posted something like, a little bit more transparency. Like, who's going to argue against that? And why can't we have a little bit more transparency about some of these processes, about some of these rogue lenders? Because it does happen all too often. I think lenders like Avonmore, which we've done business with, especially our recent experience, overall the process was well thought through and well put together. And what you can and can't do, and you kind of set it out, and you're also constantly trying to make credit exceptions. You're established to a certain extent, but sometimes there's a case, especially for bridging, where there's a borrower who doesn't want to answer all the questions. He just wants a private investor, private lender, just to jump through some quick hoops and then just to get something done very, very quickly. Now, there is an added layer of risk when that happens. But if you're packaging yourself up and you're putting on your website that we are the trusted bridging lender, and then you prove you can't be trusted, then I think it's just fair to talk about it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you being so candid about that. And to be honest with you, it's the sort of conversation that probably needs to be had more often. We were talking about transparency around funding lines. There was a lender in the market that made a big announcement about a funding line last week, and I think everyone rolled their collective eyes when they saw the announcement, because on the same basis we could have made the same announcement as well, because we benefit from the same funding line that they effectively made the announcement on the back of. And it's just and so I sort of I probably wasn't quite as aggressive as you were in terms of making about directing my ire, but it was, but it really frustrates me that the disingenuous way, and by the way, they doubled down on that, on the messaging as well. But it really annoyed me, the disingenuous way that they went about promoting that sort of new, this new funding line, which was, which everyone knew was ludicrous. And it's sort of, they abuse the trade press as well. The trade press, bless them, they don't look closely enough into when a lender makes an announcement about a funding line, the trade press don't look into that anywhere near as carefully, and they don't ask enough questions as to what it means. And I think if that particular publication had the big publication in our industry had known what the truth about that announcement, would they have gone live with it? I don't think so. So I do think that you're right around the point on transparency. I think that there's a significant lack of it.
Just one final point on that. I certainly don't want to get a reputation for like being a broker that kind of outs lenders and stuff. Certainly there might be some lenders that were like, well, I don't want to work with that guy because we're worried about him, saying this, that, and the other. And if that's the case, so be it. Because if you're worried about your practices, then I probably wouldn't want to work with you anyway. But I'm certainly not going to be making a kind of habit of this sort of thing. But I think the outcry from brokers and borrowers, developers and investors alike, there's obviously something going on that people should be talking a little bit more about to see how we can solve it together.
Yeah, I think I do believe in the sort of the principle of omerta, which is kind of you don't speak badly about the pack. Or you should try very hard not to speak badly about the pack. But obviously, and I imagine you probably feel that way, sort of deep down.
100%.
But I imagine in this instance, it was so egregious what you and your client experienced that you felt you had to do it. Ultimately, the specialist finance industry is still a relatively small, nascent industry, and that's why I have not just brokers and client and developers, but also other lenders, competitors come on, because I think we all benefit from being a larger industry, a bigger industry, and the size and scale matters, because the bigger we are, the more mainstream we are, the more money and investment we can attract in from cheaper sources of capital. And then ultimately there's beneficiary from brokers and borrowers. And I think if we start sort of shitting on each other, then I think that's dangerous. But if you've got people but I think at the same time, if you've got rogue operators operating on the margins, then I think there is a time and place for being transparent about that. Sam, so we're sort of coming to the end of our time together. I actually didn't get the chance. We run out of time actually to ask our usual lifestyle question, so we're going to have to save that for round two. But you did tell us a little bit about your family and being based down on the South Coast. Last question really is that, and this is a regular question that we have ask everyone, is if you had any advice for your younger self, what would you say to yourself and why?
Buy more property and keep it. Don't sell it all.
Short and sweet. I love it. Sam, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you? What is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
So social media channels are always good. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Property People, Merryoaks Property Finance. Google it and hopefully it'll come up.
Awesome. Sam, thanks very much.
Thank you.
This has been great.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. I've been Michael Dean. I'm at property_funder. That's a reminder that if you want to block me, mute me, or if you're crazy enough to follow me, go and find me on the various social media platforms and you can find me there. It's great chatting to Sam, and we'll catch you on the next one.